Two top executives at the BBC resigning over a January 6th documentary edit. Here is what the BBC aired. Watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
All right, so here's what President Trump actually said unedited. Listen to this.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott reports live. He's in London for us. Wow, this is a big deal at the BBC.
It's a big deal. I would say turmoil, John. And in fact, President Trump right in the middle of it. The Director General of the British broadcaster, Tim Davie, and the CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turnus, handing in their resignations. All because of that edit in a documentary of a speech President Trump made on January 6th before the violent incidents at the Capitol. The editorial decision implying a more direct call by Trump for trouble had been picked up by an internal BBC watchdog, a report from which the UK Telegraph newspaper published last week. President Trump posted, "Thank you to the Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who try to step on the scales of a presidential election." All of this, yes, causing a huge stir here. The BBC, mostly paid by the public, it has been accused of institutional bias. The network's chairman apologizing to Parliament. The ex-BBC News CEO defending the reporting.
Of course our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
To top it off, John, lawyers for President Trump sending a letter to the BBC today demanding a retraction, his own apology, and compensation by Friday, if not threatening a $1 billion lawsuit. Big stuff. Back to you.
And we should point out, Greg, as well, that the two things that the BBC edited together weren't just separated by a number of seconds. They were 50 minutes apart, nearly an hour.
Yes, in fact, there were 3 different edits made. One edit was separated by maybe 58 minutes. The BBC reporters may be going for an overall concept, but the reality, the actuality was much different than that, John.
Good Lord. All right, well, we'll see what comes of all of this. The president's certainly hopping mad about it. Greg Palcott for us from London. Thank you.
I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news. We see it in the United States all the time. We see it now in the United Kingdom.
The White House is lacing into the BBC over its airing of a misleadingly edited clip of the president's speech on January 6, 2021. We're going to show you side by side. Oh, it wasn't a mild edit. It was a complete regeneration of the truth. The president's lawyers, external lawyers, have threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion if they don't get a, quote, full and fair retraction by 5 p.m. today. 2 of its top executives resigned over the scandal at the BBC, saying it sent Trump a personal letter of apology and will not re-air the documentary. And it adds, quote, while the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there is a bias, or a basis, I should say, for a defamation claim, end of quote. Now, here is the BBC clip and Trump's unedited remarks from that day. Watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
Look at how different those clips are. And what the president said there on the original tape was reportedly some 54 minutes away from what they chose to edit on to the tape and then over his words and put in a new section, changing the meaning, changing what would look like more their purpose than his. Podcaster Joe Rogan with a blistering takedown of BBC.
seems like these people felt justified for completely lying because it would lead to an ultimate good. So they lost all journalistic integrity. And it is the BBC, which is like the height of journalistic integrity. If that doesn't show the rot of mainstream corporate-controlled media, then nothing does. Right. Because that's pure rot.
Fox News political analyst now, Lisa Booth. Lisa, when you look at that tape, I mean, it's you can't even say that it's a mistake. It looks purposeful, or maybe it was.
Well, it looks like election interference, right? So they rip out what he said in the interim there, which is he said peacefully and patriotically. And then you jump right to fight like hell 54 minutes later. What do you think the objective was here? And they dropped this right before the 2024 presidential election. They were trying to paint the picture that President Trump intentionally incited January 6th by lying to their viewers. And you can look at the 2024 presidential election, Harris. It was really the tale of two edits. You look at what CBC did to Kamala Harris. They edited her word salad to try to make her look, competent and coherent. And then you look at what the BBC did to President Trump. And then this is reinforced by the Media Research Center finding that this was the most biased election we've ever seen in history. And was it worth it for the BBC and CBS? They both have faced financial pressure, resignations, and guess what? President Trump is in the White House. Meanwhile, trust in the media is at an all-time low. So who got annihilated here?
All right, next topic for us. The liberal media continued trashing Charlie Kirk 2 months after his assassination. And during an interview this week, Katie Couric, remember her? Katie Couric tried time and time again to get Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman to bad-mouth Charlie Kirk. The senator refused to take the bait.
A father of young children was shot in public because of his political views, and that's a tragedy, and give people the space to grieve.
Do you think that flags should have been flown at half staff? Do you think his body should have been flown on Air Force Two? Do you think he should have posthumously be given the Presidential Medal of Freedom? I think some people felt that that was perhaps over the top in terms of mourning someone like Charlie Kirk. How did you feel about that?
I'd say that was his choice and his prerogative, and that was really entirely up to him.
Did you have any issues now in hindsight over some of the things that Charlie Kirk said and some of the rhetoric he used during his life?
I didn't agree with much of it. I didn't closely follow his specific kinds of views. That would never justify what's happened.
Lisa, what's your reaction?
Well, why does it matter what Charlie Kirk's rhetoric was? He was assassinated. He's dead. What is her intention here? Is she trying to imply that somehow Charlie Kirk had it coming, which is what we've heard from a lot of people on the left, and even worse than that, some celebration from the left? And I would argue that the media is actually to blame for a lot of the violence and the discord we've seen in the country, particularly when you were following that live coverage of what was happening in Chicago. The media has claimed, they've lied about some of these ICE arrests. They've lied about the fact that ICE has arrested the majority of the people that they've arrested have been criminals. You can go back to the lies about Michael Brown and hands up, don't shoot that led to this war on cops because people thought that cops were just going around and gunning down unarmed black men, even though the statistics didn't prove that out. Or you can look at what happened to President Trump and his the assassination attempt against him. I mean, the media lied about what he said about Charlottesville. He explicitly condemned the neo-Nazis and the KKK, but the media lied because they wanted the viewer at home to believe that somehow President Trump is in bed with the KKK and the Nazis. So the media owns this environment that we're living in, and it's time for them to wake up and start being honest with the American people.
Well, look, I asked the audience, do you remember Katie Couric? She was a long-standing journalist, first with NBC, and very well known for that. You ask what was the intention here. It is a great follow-up question. We'll see if we ever get to ask her that question. Lisa Booth, thank you.
Joining me now is Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, I think it's one of the most nakedly political things that you could possibly see in the media. It's beyond malpractice. And in my mind, by the way, I think it's defamatory in America. It's certainly defamatory in the UK, where the bar is much lower for defamation than in the U.S.
That's right. That's right, Will. You're so right. You're a lawyer. And look, in Great Britain, it's the reverse of the U.S. The burden of proof shifts to the defendant to prove they didn't defame somebody. So it favors plaintiffs. Look, here's the game. When you get caught red-handed defaming somebody, as the BBC did, well, you try to minimize the financial exposure. You offer an apology, retraction of the slander. They did that, but it does not erase the past damages that Trump sustained. When the BBC, as you showed it, hacked up the J6 video to falsely portray Trump as inciting violence, that documentary ran repeatedly over a long period of time. And in fact, they did the same thing, same videotape 2 years earlier. So that caused considerable harm to Trump's reputation, not just in Great Britain, but throughout Europe. The BBC is seen everywhere on television, social media. This was dishonest propaganda journalism at its worst.
The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that rivals it, that's in the same manner, is the way that the Very Fine People clip got edited and spread around, creating a false narrative. Great. And by the way, just for the audience's edification, defamation, I think, is fascinating. And President Trump is a public figure. So in the United States, the standard is malice. Did they do it maliciously or with a reckless disregard for the truth? And look, if I'm a plaintiff's attorney, I'm looking at that going, you're damn right that's a reckless disregard of the truth.
Yeah, they absolutely knew what the truth was, and they ignored it. They edited it in a deceptive way. And the two top executives resigned in disgrace, and they removed the slander. Yet, Will, can you believe it? The network still claims it wasn't defamatory. Of course it was. It was done with actual malice. Why else would they delete it and apologize? Yet they still insist, oh, there's no institutional bias in our newsroom. That's absurd, and in fact, it's undermined by a smoking gun internal memo giving a very detailed account of the rampant liberal bias that has infected the BBC's reporting, the stories they choose to cover, the slanted way they tell those stories. They should compensate Trump and hoover their newsroom of all the faux journalists who refuse to be fair and objective.
I would say they should probably prepare for compensation. I don't know if they'll go to $1 billion, Greg, but be prepared. All right, Greg Jarrett, great conversation.
Good to see you, Will. Thanks.
The BBC apologizing to President Trump in the face of a $1 billion legal threat. The Brits admitted they slapped together two parts of his Jan 6 speech, more than 50 minutes apart, in a way that made it appear he was advocating violence.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
But the broadcaster is rejecting Trump's billion-dollar demand for damages, saying this, quote, while the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there's a basis for a defamation claim. Do you strongly disagree there's a basis?
Wait, I strongly agree there is a basis for defamation. This was clearly actual malice, at a minimum, reckless disregard. And I want to go back to something that let's talk about this legally speaking. The appropriate remedy for a massive reputational hit, potential swaying or material impact on an election is not an apology. So President Trump is absolutely correct that here, the defamation, the injury to his reputation, the material impact to the election, that is so clear. They spliced together two statements 54 minutes apart. BBC argues that's just a bad edit. It was unintentional. But the material message of the president's speech was the peaceful and patriotic, people's voices be made heard peacefully and patriotic. BBC made it as if his entire conclusion, the entire thesis, was one of violence. So absolutely the distortion is material and real. And if they think they're going to get away with simply an apology, they won't. They have better arguments about venue and jurisdiction than they do about the malice. But I hope to God that President Trump does not accept a settlement from them, not 1 cent at this stage, because I want it to go to trial, because I want BBC to stand corrected for this horrific editing that they've done to multiple people.
Can I ask her a quick question?
No, that's not how the show works.
It's your segment, but I have a question.
If you want to.
They say, and like the point about the material damage to his campaign, and the BBC is saying that is not true, and offering as evidence, they say the fact that he won the presidential election makes that moot. Like, they could not have caused him any reputational damage because he won the election. Does that play like legally?
Well, that harm is not an on-off switch. So there is absolutely reputational harm. And we go through this a lot with these public figures. That's why there's the actual malice standard, that the spectrum is very real, very real. And you cannot in any way claim that President Trump was not harmed reputationally. We talk about the internet, the global wild spreading all through Australia and BBC there from their editing. I'm sorry, Greg.
I can see Greg salivating, but we're not going to you, Greg.
Oh, no.
We're going to the other lawyer. Other lawyer. Do you think the BBC will be paying for the Trump Presidential Library?
I don't know. It'll get sorted out, and I'm not convinced the president won't settle. The president has settled most of these cases, and he's made it clear the monetary thing is his focus. I haven't looked at it closely enough to understand. I think that Emily outlined correctly the legal standard. It's unclear to me if someone is giving a singular speech and you splice up in a singular speech. If you splice up several speeches they did, I don't know, but I think that my recollection in law school, there's a standard around that, but you're smarter than me. You would know that. Two things, politicians, especially presidents, no one likes criticism. And no one likes unfair criticism like this. In the BBC, the apology may not be enough. I think there's probably an in-between between the apology and $1 billion. And somebody will like to figure that out.
A wide gap. Greg.
Well, this wasn't criticism, it was deception, and they wouldn't be apologizing if they hadn't been caught. Mm-hmm. So we should actually, let's go over what the damage was done. He won the presidency. That's not what it's about. They deliberately created a narrative that Trump led an insurrection that was amplified repetitively all throughout the world. It didn't just tar Trump, but it tarred all of his supporters, and it led to a branding. Fascist, authoritarian, Nazi, Hitler, which then put targets on people's backs, which made them more likely to be shot or murdered, whether it be Trump or Charlie Kirk. This was no innocent mistake. This network must be crushed. I want to live in a world where BBC only stands for something on an adult-friendly site. I love how, Stelter complains about how it's unfair, you're holding these networks to a higher standard. Well, duh. They elevated themselves to a higher standard. We don't walk around lying repeatedly so the lies match our narratives. We don't pretend to be perfect. The legacy media is dead. All that's missing is the toe tag. Last but not least,
what's the toe tag?
Toe tag?
Like autopsy. Like
it's a game I play.
On a dead person.
All right. Okay. You casual anti-Trumpers need to ask yourself this. If Trump was as bad as everybody tells you, why do they have to make stuff up? Why do they have to doctor or edit reality to fit their narrative? Simple question.
Simple question, simple answer. But
I'm going to miss BBC World Weather.
You are?
Have you ever seen BBC World Weather? It's amazing.
Not as good as Fox weather.
It's like in Canada today, it's going to be cold. Over here in the Middle East, it's going to be more mild. It's going to be in the 50s, 60s.
You want to get
here in Latin America, it's like amazing.
You want to get really disgusted with the BBC, look at their trans coverage, where they actually said that breast milk from men claiming to be women was every bit as nutritious for babies as biological women's breast milk. What kind of mind, what kind of mentality, ideology, it's a sickness to actually push that.
When Harold was lactating, I found his breast milk delicious and nutritious.
You said you wouldn't tell anybody.
Coming up next, J.D. Vance outlines how Trump will clean up Joe Biden's affordability crisis.
So tonight, the British Broadcasting Corporation is waiting to see what, if any, liability it may have over deceptive editing of audio from President Trump. The BBC has apologized, but there's more to this story. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott has the latest from London tonight.
New clashes in the war between President Trump and the UK's BBC. It's about a documentary that aired before last year's elections. Quotes spliced together in a speech Trump delivered on January 6, 2021, implying wrongly that he made a direct call for violence, which did occur later at the Capitol. After the news broke, the BBC admitted it was wrong and axed 2 of its top officials.
The purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news.
Trump's lawyers demanding a personal apology, a retraction, compensation, threatening a $1 billion lawsuit. The BBC chairman now sending a letter of apology to the White House. The network also says the documentary won't air again, but hedging on the money, stating, while the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there is a basis for a defamation claim. The BBC arguing the program didn't air in the States and Trump won the election. The question now, will Trump sue? Earlier in the week, he sounded up for the fight.
Well, I guess I have to. Why not? Because they defrauded the public.
That's got some officials here outraged.
Trump has undermined press freedom in America. Now he's trying to do the same here.
Experts say you probably can't sue in the UK because in British law, too much time has elapsed. As for suing stateside, with American free speech protections, experts say defamation could be hard to prove.
This will be a very challenging case for the president because of the standard that applies in the United States.
It doesn't mean Trump won't try. In legal clashes with U.S. networks, he settled for multi-million-dollar payouts. The hitch is the BBC is funded mostly by the British public through TV license fees. Any payout would come out of the people's pockets. Shannon.
All right, Greg Palcott in London, thank you.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical, and they actually changed it.
Tonight, you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Amid threats from President Trump that he's going to sue the BBC for its deceptive editing of his January 6th speech, we are learning the network did it a second time. Come on, BBC. The Telegraph reporting that BBC Newsnight made a misleading edit back in 2022 to make it appear like Trump was, quote, encouraging his supporters to riot. Here it is. First, the BBC's edit. Then what he really said.
We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we fight. We fight like hell. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
Those two comments the BBC spliced together were made nearly an hour apart and weren't related. The BBC told us that the network, quote, holds itself to the highest editorial standards. This matter has been brought to our attention and we are now looking into it, end quote. Well, they better look a little harder. This comes after the network was forced to apologize to Trump after he threatened to sue over the first deceptive edit. The BBC also says it won't play the documentary again, because it's bogus, I guess. That's probably a good reason. But they won't pay out. Here to discuss, Jason Miller, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign. All right, Jason, President Trump just responded moments ago aboard Air Force One. We have a sound here of this. Watch this, and I want to get your reaction to what the president just said.
So the BBC has apologised and retracted the report, but they say they won't pay any compensation.
Well,
Is that enough?
We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready?
So, Jason, you've seen it all from your vantage point and your proximity to the president, but now the president's saying definitively, yeah, we're going to probably sue them next week, $1 to $5 billion. As the president tries to scratch back his reputation. That edit was so deceptive.
Yeah, it really was. And good for President Trump for following up here and not letting off. And I think one of the things that people need to really realize here is that the BBC, as you pointed out, they've only apologized once. They didn't apologize for both of the times. They apologized for one. And the fact that they came out and said after days and days of waiting that they refuse to make President Trump whole, to pay any sort of restitution, is really unconscionable. But let me explain for people at home why the BBC is in so much trouble. The burden of proof in the UK is much different than it is in the United States. In the United States, the plaintiff, the person who was defamed, the person who's doing the suing, has to prove that what was said against them is false. But in the UK, the defendant, the media outlet who made the defamatory statement, has to prove that what they said was true. Well, as you played for the audience, there was nothing true about that statement from the BBC. They went and spliced things together intentionally. And then the fact that you had all the BBC leadership resign or pushed out, whatever language you want to use, that's another admission of guilt. The other thing, too, as you smartly pointed out, that President Trump really has an obligation to follow through on this, to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I tell you, President Trump and even Mrs. Trump have really been on a winning streak against the fake news ever since he came back into office. And I don't see him backing off here at all.
No, nor should he. Interestingly, their Parliament was quick to back the BBC. Have a look at some of these, some of this.
President Trump is trying to destroy our BBC, not because he cares about the truth, but because he doesn't want to get away with his lies. Will the Prime Minister tell President Trump to drop his demand for a $1 billion settlement from the BBC?
And the BBC must uphold the highest standards, be accountable and correct errors quickly. But I will always stand up for a strong, independent BBC.
Yeah. What's it like to stand up for strong, independent journalism or whatever he said versus a deceptive lie?
Right, exactly. And again, they're only upset because they got caught. They're not upset because they actually are disgusted with their own behavior. They just, again, they were caught doing it. And again, for the folks in the Labour Party to go and act like their hair's on fire here, here's what a lot of people don't realize. In the UK, citizens have to go and pay a licensing fee. They have to go and spend their taxpayer dollars to fund this garbage. So they're funding actual fake news. Imagine if, well, we already have the PBS, but imagine if, say, for example, we had to fund, I don't know, the attacks from NBC or ABC or some of these outlets that have attacked President Trump for years now. So this is really egregious, and folks in the UK are upset, just as upset as President Trump.
Well, they should. I think once they see and understand the gravity of the deceptive edits, and then, you know, 2 times, that makes it all the worse. Jason Miller, thanks for joining us tonight. Really do appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.